The snow was falling softly as I pulled into the parking lot of Riverside Country Club at 6:15 on Christmas Eve. The building glowed with warm light, every window framed with elegant white garland and tiny golden lights. It looked like something from a greeting card. I'd worn a dark green dress, simple but nice, with my grandmother's pearl necklace. Nothing flashy. Nothing that would draw attention. I'd learned years ago that blending in made things easier with my family. The Valley Station was busy, luxury cars pulling up one after another. BMWs, Mercedes, even a Bentley. I drove past them to the self-park area and found a spot near the back. My 4-year-old Subaru looked out of place, but I was used to that. As I approached the main entrance, I could see my family gathered near the doors. My father stood at the center in his tailored suit, my mother beside him in a red cocktail dress that probably cost more than my monthly rent. My older brother Derek and his wife Cynthia were there too, both looking polished and expensive. "Emma," my father said as I reached the steps. His tone wasn't warm. "Hi, Dad. Merry Christmas." "Emma, there's been a change of plans." I stopped walking. "What kind of change?" "Tonight's dinner is members only," he said, crossing his arms. "Club policy. Very strict about it, especially on holidays." "But I'm family." "I thought." "You're family, but you're not a member," my mother interrupted. Her smile was sharp. "The club has standards, dear. You understand." Derek stepped forward. "Come on, Emma. Don't make this difficult. You had to know this might happen. We told you weeks ago that we were upgrading our membership status here. Platinum level. Very exclusive. You told me you were having Christmas dinner here and I should come," I said quietly. "You didn't mention anything about members only." "Well, circumstances change," Cynthia said, examining her manicured nails. "Platinum members get priority access during peak times. The club can't have non-members cluttering up the dining room. It affects the atmosphere." "Cluttering up," I repeated. "You know what she means," Mom said. "It's about maintaining a certain level of quality. Ambience. People expect that when they pay premium membership fees." "I see." Dad's expression softened slightly, which somehow made it worse. "Look, Emma, we're not trying to be cruel. It's just reality. You're not at the same level as the rest of us. You work at that nonprofit, you live in that little apartment, you drive that." He gestured vaguely at the parking lot. "That economy car. This club is for people who've achieved certain things in life." "And I haven't achieved those things," I said. "Not yet," Mom said, like she was being generous. "Maybe someday. But tonight you really should find somewhere more appropriate. Maybe try Applebee's? They're usually open on Christmas Eve. Very festive." Derek shifted uncomfortably. "Emma, don't take this personally. It's not about you specifically. It's about the club's standards." "Right. The standards." "Exactly," Cynthia said brightly. "I'm sure you understand. It's like how some restaurants have dress codes. This club has membership codes. It's perfectly reasonable." A couple walked past us into the club, the man nodding to my father. "George. Looking forward to dinner. Patricia, lovely as always." "Wonderful to see you, Harold." Mom called back, her voice suddenly warm and friendly. The moment they passed, her expression cooled again. "Emma, you really need to go now. People are starting to notice and it's embarrassing." "Embarrassing for who?" "For everyone," Dad said firmly. "We're trying to build relationships here. Important relationships. Having you standing at the entrance like, well, it doesn't look good." "Like I'm some kind of beggar," I said softly. "Don't be dramatic," Mom snapped. "We're just being realistic about social hierarchies. You're 30 years old, Emma. You should understand how the world works by now." I looked at each of them. My father, standing like a security guard blocking entry to a place I supposedly wasn't good enough to enter. My mother, embarrassed by my existence. My brother, uncomfortable but not uncomfortable enough to actually say anything. His wife, openly enjoying my humiliation. "Hey," I said. "I'll go." "Good girl," Mom said, already turning away. "Maybe next year you'll have improved your situation enough to join us." I turned toward the parking lot, my heels crunching softly on the light dusting of snow. Behind me I heard my family greeting more arrivals, their voices cheerful and warm. None of that warmth had been for me. I'd made it about 3 steps when I heard rapid footsteps behind me. "Miss Anderson. Miss Anderson, wait." I turned to see Richard Chin rushing out of the club's main entrance. Richard was the club director, a position he'd held for 15 years. He was usually calm and composed, but right now he looked almost panicked. "Richard, it's fine," I started. "It's absolutely not fine," he said, slightly out of breath. He looked past me to where my family stood frozen on the steps. "What's going on here? Why are you leaving?" "Members only tonight," I said quietly. Family explained the policy. Richard's expression shifted from concerned to confused. "Members only? We don't have a members-only policy on Christmas Eve. We're actually fully booked tonight, but that's because..." He stopped, staring at my family. "Did you tell Ms. Anderson she couldn't enter?" "Now look here," Dad started, stepping forward. "I don't know who you think you are, but we're platinum members of this club, and we have every right to determine who we dine with. I'm Richard Chin, the club director. We've met several times, Mr. Anderson, during your membership application process." "Exactly," Dad said. "So you know we're valued members. And we're telling you that our dinner party tonight is members only. Our family members only." "Your family members only," Richard repeated slowly. His eyes moved to me, then back to my family. "Mr. Anderson, do you know who Ms. Anderson is?" "Of course I know who she is," Dad said impatiently. "She's my daughter. And while we love her, she's not a member of this club, so she can't join us tonight." "Mr. Anderson," Richard said carefully, "Emma Anderson is not just a member of this club." "Right, she's not a member at all," Cynthia interjected. "That's what we've been saying." "No, Mrs. Anderson. I mean, Emma Anderson is not just a member." Richard's voice took on a strange quality. "She's the owner." The silence that followed was profound. "The what?" Mom said faintly. "The owner. Ms. Anderson owns Riverside Country Club. She has owned it for the past 6 years. Derek laughed, but it sounded nervous. "That's impossible. Emma works at a nonprofit. She barely makes $40,000 a year." "I work for a charitable foundation," I said quietly. "I never said it was my only job." "But you..." Mom looked at me like she was seeing a stranger. "You drive a Subaru." "I like my Subaru." "You live in a 2-bedroom apartment." "I like my apartment." Dad's face had gone red. "This is some kind of mistake. Emma can't afford to own a country club. Look at her. She shops at Target." "Mr. Anderson," Richard said, his professional composure starting to crack, "I assure you there is no mistake. Ms. Anderson purchased Riverside Country Club 6 years ago through Anderson Holdings, LC. She owns this property, the golf course, the tennis facilities, and all associated assets." A woman in an elegant pantsuit emerged from the entrance. Her name tag identified her as Sharon Mitchell, Assistant Director. "Richard, is everything all right? Several members are asking about the commotion." "Sharon, could you please confirm Ms. Anderson's ownership status for her family?" Sharon looked confused, then saw me standing there in the snow. "Ms. Anderson, I didn't realize you were here." "Of course." He turned to my family. "Emma Anderson is the sole owner of Riverside Country Club. She's also been incredibly gracious about maintaining our traditions and staff. We're lucky to have her." "This doesn't make any sense," Cynthia said, her voice rising. "How could Emma possibly afford to buy a country club?" "The same way I afford everything else," I said. "I work for it." "You said you work at a nonprofit." "I do. The Anderson Foundation, which I founded 8 years ago after I sold my software company." Derek's mouth opened and closed. "You sold a software company?" "I started it when I was 22. Sold it when I was 26 for $43 million. I used part of the money to start the foundation and I invested the rest in various properties including this club." $43 million, Mom repeated numbly. "That was the initial sale price. With the equity options and performance bonuses, it ended up being closer to $60 million. But I try not to be too specific about finances. It seems tacky." Dad sat down heavily on the steps. "You've had $60 million for 6 years and you never told us? You never asked. You just assumed I was poor because I didn't perform wealth the way you wanted me to." "But why?" Mom demanded. "Why would you live like that if you have money?" "Because I like my life. I like my apartment. I like my car. I like working at the foundation and actually helping people instead of just talking about wealth and status at country club dinners." Richard cleared his throat. Ms. Anderson, I apologize profusely for this situation. If I had known your family was turning you away, I would have intervened immediately. It's all right, Richard. You didn't know. It's not all right, he said firmly. He turned to my father. Mr. Anderson, I'm going to need to have a serious conversation with you about club conduct policies. Conduct policies? Dad stood up quickly. Now wait a minute. We're platinum members. We've spent a fortune on this membership. You've spent $12,000 on your membership, Richard corrected, which is our standard platinum rate. However, that membership comes with certain behavioral expectations, including treating all members and guests with respect. We weren't disrespecting anyone. Cynthia protested. We were just explaining the reality of the situation. The reality, Sharon said coldly, is that you were preventing the club's owner from entering her own property on Christmas Eve. A man in a dark suit joined the growing group near the entrance. His badge read, Thomas Warren, Head of Security. Richard, we have a situation developing. Multiple members are gathering in the lobby wanting to know what's happening. Some are concerned about a disturbance. There's no disturbance, Dad said quickly. Just a family misunderstanding. Everything's fine now. Emma, sweetheart, why don't you come join us for dinner? We'd love to have you. I looked at him. His expression was desperate now, all the superiority gone. Would you? I asked. Of course. Your family. We just didn't understand the full situation. The situation where I own the building? That's not what I meant. But it's what you mean now. 5 minutes ago I wasn't good enough to enter. Now I own the place, so suddenly I'm welcome. Emma, don't be difficult, Mom said, but her voice shook. We made a mistake. Can't you forgive a mistake? A mistake, I repeated. Is that what we're calling it? Another person emerged from the club. An elderly gentleman in an expensive suit, walking with a cane. I recognized him immediately. Charles Pemberton, president of the club's member board. What on earth is going on out here? He demanded. Richard, we have guests waiting for tables and half the staff is distracted by some drama at the front entrance. Mr. Pemberton, Richard said. I apologize for the disruption. There's been an incident involving Ms. Anderson. Charles's expression changed instantly. Emma? What happened? Are you all right? I'm fine, Charles. Just a misunderstanding with my family. He looked at my parents, then back at me, his expression sharpening. What kind of misunderstanding? The kind where they told me I couldn't enter because I'm not a member, I said quietly. Charles's face went purple. They did what? It was a mistake. Dad said desperately. We thought there was a members-only policy tonight. There is no such policy, and even if there were, Emma Anderson could enter this club at any time for any reason because she owns every square inch of it. Charles turned to Richard. Tell me their membership status. Richard pulled out his phone, tapped a few times. George and Patricia Anderson. Platinum membership initiated 8 weeks ago. $12,000 annual fee paid in full. Currently applying for Heritage Club status, which would give them access to the private dining rooms and golf priority booking. Heritage Club status, Charles said slowly. That's under my committee's review, correct? Yes, sir. And we were planning to make our final decision on their application after the holiday? That's correct. Charles looked at my parents. Were you aware that Heritage Club status requires not just financial standing but also demonstrated good character and positive contribution to the club community? Yes, Mom said weakly. And you thought turning away the club owner from her own property on Christmas Eve demonstrated good character? We didn't know she was the owner. Cynthia burst out. She never told us. She let us think she was poor. I never said I was poor, I corrected. You assumed it because I didn't buy expensive cars or designer clothes. I didn't correct you because it didn't matter to me what you thought. Didn't matter? Mom's voice cracked. Emma, we're your family. Are you? Because family doesn't usually suggest I eat at Applebee's while they dine at a country club. Derek stepped forward. Emma, come on. This has gone far enough. Yes, we were wrong. We admit it. Can't we just go inside and have a nice dinner and work this out? Work it out, I said. You mean pretend the last 6 years didn't happen? Pretend you haven't spent every family gathering making comments about my little apartment, and starter car, and entry-level job? Pretend you didn't just try to ban me from a building I own. We didn't know you owned it. That's the point, Derek. You didn't know, but you still treated me like I was beneath you. The only thing that's changed is that now you know I have money. I'm the same person I was 10 minutes ago. But 10 minutes ago, I wasn't good enough for your platinum members' dinner party. A younger woman appeared, wearing the club's staff uniform. Mr. Chin, I'm sorry to interrupt, but we have guests asking about Ms. Anderson. The Robertson family would like to say hello, and the Martinez group is requesting a photo with her. Photo? Dad said blankly. The staff member looked confused. Ms. Anderson is quite popular with our members. She attends several events throughout the year, and she's personally funded 3 scholarship programs for local students. Many members consider her a friend. You come here regularly? Mom asked me. Every few weeks. I like to check on operations and attend community events. But we've been members for 2 months. Why haven't we seen you? You have, I said. 3 times. Once in the parking lot when you drove past me without acknowledging me. Once in the lobby when you were showing off for your friends and pretended not to notice me. And once on the patio when you made a joke to someone about how even the staff dressed better than some people's families. Mom's face went white. That was about you? I was sitting 2 tables away. Richard's expression had gone from professional concern to cold anger. Ms. Anderson, I apologize that you experienced that treatment at your own club. That's unacceptable. It's fine, Richard. It's not fine. He turned to Thomas. I want a full review of the Anderson family's interactions with staff and other members. Tonight. Immediately, sir, Thomas said, pulling out a radio. Tao, hold on, Dad protested. You can't investigate us like we're criminals. We're platinum members. We've donated to club causes. You've paid your membership fees, Charles corrected sharply. That's not the same as donating. And frankly, Mr. Anderson, your behavior tonight calls into serious question whether you understand what this club stands for. A couple approached from the parking lot, older, distinguished looking. The man nodded to me warmly. Emma. Wonderful to see you. Are you joining the Christmas dinner? Hi, Dr. Robertson. Mrs. Robertson. I'm not sure yet. Well, we hope you do. Sarah was just saying how lovely it would be to have you at our table. You're always such delightful company. They continued inside. Mom stared after them. You know the Robertsons? Of course. They've been members here for 30 years. Dr. Robertson serves on the foundation board with me. The foundation board, Mom repeated. The Anderson Foundation has 12 board members. All prominent community leaders. We allocate approximately $8 million annually to local education and healthcare initiatives. $8 million a year, Derek said numbly. Another family passed us on the way in. Emma. Merry Christmas. Merry Christmas, Mr. Tanaka. And another. Ms. Anderson, my daughter wanted me to thank you again for her scholarship. She's doing wonderfully at Princeton. I'm so glad to hear that, Mrs. Chin. Tell her I said congratulations. Each greeting made my family shrink a little smaller. People I'd apparently been interacting with for years, relationships they'd never known about because they'd never bothered to ask about my life. Sharon's radio crackled. She listened, then looked at Richard. Sir, we have a situation in the dining room. Several members are asking about the delay in seating, and the Anderson party's table is currently the focal point of attention. The focal point? Cynthia said nervously. The Robertson family has been asking other members if they knew about the incident at the entrance, Sharon explained. It's creating significant conversation. Charles made a disgusted sound. Of course it is. Emma, I'm deeply sorry about this. This club is supposed to be a place of community and respect. It usually is, I said. Tonight was just unusual. Unusual, he repeated. That's generous of you. Mr. and Mrs. Anderson, I think you should know that your behavior tonight will be discussed at the next Heritage Club committee meeting. Discussed how? Dad asked, fear creeping into his voice. Discussed in terms of whether individuals who treat the club owner with such disrespect are suitable for elevated membership status. Or any membership status at all. Mom gasped. You can't revoke our membership. We've paid for the full year. We can absolutely revoke membership for conduct violations, Charles said. It's in the contract you signed. Section 12, paragraph 3. Richard was typing on his phone. I'm pulling up their file now. I'm also seeing several incident reports from staff members. Incident reports? Derek said. 3 separate complaints from servers about dismissive treatment. 2 complaints from the valet staff about verbal rudeness. 1 complaint from the golf course superintendent about damage to the green that was never reported or paid for. That was an accident, Cynthia said. Accidents that aren't reported become patterns of disrespect, Richard said coldly. And now we add attempting to bar the owner from her own property. Ms. Anderson, what would you like us to do? All eyes turned to me. My family looked terrified. The staff looked angry on my behalf. Charles looked like he wanted to throw my parents out personally. I'd like, I said slowly, to have Christmas dinner. Of course, Richard said immediately. Your usual table? Actually, I saw that Dr. and Mrs. Robertson invited me to their table. I think I'll join them if that's all right. I'm sure they'd be delighted. And the Anderson party? Sharon asked, glancing at my family. I looked at my parents, my brother, his wife. All of them standing in the snow, their expensive clothes and jewelry suddenly seeming costume-like and fake. The Anderson party is welcome to stay for their dinner, I said. At their reserved table. Dad sagged with relief. Thank you, Emma. Thank you so much. We'll never. However, I continued, their membership status is under review pending the Heritage Club Committee's investigation into tonight's incident. Richard, please make a note that any future complaints about the Anderson family should be reported directly to me. Understood. And Charles, at the next board meeting, I'd like to propose a new club policy. Any member who demonstrates discriminatory behavior toward other members or guests based on perceived economic status should face immediate membership suspension. I'll add it to the agenda personally, Charles said with grim satisfaction. One more thing, I said. The Anderson party's application for Heritage Club status is denied. Permanently. Emma, please, Mom said, tears starting to form. We made a mistake. Don't punish us forever for one mistake. Heritage Club status isn't a punishment to deny. It's an honor to grant. And you haven't earned it. But everyone we know is Heritage Club level. Cynthia protested. How will it look if we're rejected? It will look like you faced consequences for your behavior. I imagine it will be very embarrassing for you. I paused. Maybe you could try Applebee's? Mom made a small wounded sound. Thomas spoke into his radio, listened, then looked at Richard. Sir, we have multiple members asking to speak with Ms. Anderson. The Martinez family, the Patel family, the Johnsons. Tell them I'll be in shortly, I said. I just need to finish up here. Ms. Anderson, Sharon said hesitantly, about the Anderson party's table. It's currently positioned in the main dining room with good visibility. Given the circumstances, should we relocate them somewhere more discreet? I considered this. My family waited, hardly breathing. No, I said finally. Leave them at their original table. Let them eat their Christmas dinner in full view of everyone. Emma, please don't do this, Derek said quietly. People will ask questions. They'll want to know why we're not sitting with you. Yes, they will. And what will you tell them? He had no answer. You'll tell them the truth. That you tried to turn away your own sister from a country club she owns because you thought she wasn't good enough. And then you'll sit there and eat your dinner and think about what kind of people that makes you. That's cruel, Cynthia whispered. Is it? Or is it just the natural consequence of your own behavior? Another group approached from the parking lot. A young couple with 2 small children. Ms. Anderson. Merry Christmas. Merry Christmas, Taylor, Josh. Hi, Emma. Hi, Lily. I waved at the kids who beamed at me. The kids wanted to thank you again for the playground donation, Taylor said. It's been such a joy for the whole community. I'm so glad. Have a wonderful dinner tonight. They went inside, the children chattering excitedly about Santa Claus. Dad watched them go, then looked at me like he was seeing me for the first time. A playground donation? He asked weakly. The elementary school needed new equipment. The foundation covered it. $400,000. $400,000 for a playground? It's a very nice playground. Safe, accessible, educational. Everything children deserve. Mom's voice was small. Why didn't you tell us you were doing things like that? You never asked what I did with my time. You just assumed I wasn't doing anything important because I wasn't buying luxury cars or designer purses. Richard's phone buzzed. He looked at it, then at me. Ms. Anderson, the Robertson table is asking when you'll be joining them. Should I tell them you'll be delayed? No, I'm ready now. I started toward the entrance, then paused. Oh, one more thing. Richard, what's the status of the Anderson Party's bar tab? They have a platinum membership, so they currently receive a 25% discount on all food and beverages. Please remove that discount effective immediately. Standard pricing only. Emma. Dad protested. Platinum members receive discounts based on their standing in the club community, I said. I don't think your standing is particularly high right now, do you? I walked toward the entrance. Richard and Sharon fell into step beside me and Charles followed. Thomas remained with my family, presumably to escort them to their table. As we entered the warm, beautifully decorated lobby, I could see members milling around, clearly aware that something significant had happened outside. Several people waved to me. A few called out greetings. Ms. Anderson, Richard said quietly as we walked, I need to ask. How would you like us to handle this going forward? Your family's membership, I mean. Honor their current annual contract. But make it clear that renewal is not guaranteed and will be subject to demonstrated improvement in behavior and community contribution. And if they don't improve? Then next year they can have their Christmas dinner somewhere else. Sharon leaned closer. Between you and me, I hope they don't improve. Watching them have to explain to their friends why their membership wasn't renewed would be enormously satisfying. I smiled despite myself. That's unprofessional, Sharon. Yes, ma'am. But still true. We reached the entrance to the main dining room. Through the doorway, I could see the Robertson table waving at me, welcoming. I could also see my family being seated at their table near the center of the room, my mother's face pale, my father's expression hollow. One last thing, I said to Richard. I want a full report on my desk after the holidays detailing every interaction my family has had with staff and other members since they joined. Everything. I want to know if this kind of behavior is a pattern or just tonight's spectacular failure. You'll have it by December 27th, he promised. Thank you. And Richard? Have a Merry Christmas. You've handled this with remarkable professionalism. Thank you, Ms. Anderson. Though I wish the circumstances had been different. So do I. I walked into the dining room. The Robertsons stood to greet me, Dr. Robertson pulling out my chair personally. Emma. We're so delighted you're joining us. Thank you for having me. As I sat down, I had a clear view of my family's table. They were staring at their menus like they contained the secrets of the universe, clearly trying to avoid eye contact with anyone. Several nearby tables were whispering, glancing between them and me. Mrs. Robertson followed my gaze. Is everything all right, dear? You seemed a bit delayed coming in. Just a family matter, I said. Nothing serious. Family, she said knowingly. Sometimes they're the most complicated relationships we have. Sometimes, I agreed. A server appeared with champagne. Compliments of the house, Ms. Anderson. The chef wanted to wish you a Merry Christmas. Please give him my thanks. Across the room I saw my mother watching this exchange, her face a mixture of confusion and misery. Dad was talking to a server, probably asking about prices now that they'd lost their discount. Derek sat with his arms crossed, while Cynthia kept glancing around nervously, aware of the attention they were receiving. Dr. Robertson raised his glass. A toast. To kindness, generosity, and the true spirit of the season. Hear, hear, several voices chorused. I raised my glass and smiled. And for the first time that evening the smile was genuine. The rest of the dinner passed pleasantly. The Robertsons were warm and funny, telling stories about their grandchildren and their recent trip to Italy. Other members stopped by to say hello, to thank me for various foundation initiatives, to wish me happy holidays. I felt surrounded by real community, real connection. My family, meanwhile, sat at their table eating in near silence. I watched them occasionally, not out of vindictiveness but out of a kind of sad curiosity. Had they always been like this? Had I just never noticed because I was too busy trying to meet their impossible standards? Around 9:30, as dessert was being served, Richard appeared at my table. He leaned down discreetly. Ms. Anderson, the Anderson party is requesting their check. They'd like to leave. Already? Dinner service usually runs until 11 on Christmas Eve. Yes. They seem uncomfortable. I imagine they are. I thought for a moment. Process their check at standard rates as discussed. And Richard? Make sure the itemized receipt shows the discount they would have received as platinum members, then shows it being removed. I want them to see exactly what their behavior cost them. A small smile played at Richard's lips. Understood. 10 minutes later, I saw my parents standing at their table, my father holding what looked like a bill, his face turning red as he read it. He said something sharp to the server, who remained professionally calm and pointed toward the exit. Toward Richard, who stood there with his tablet, presumably ready to explain the charges. I watched my father argue. Watched my mother try to pull him away. Watched Derek hand over a credit card with shaking hands. Watched Cynthia walk quickly toward the exit, her head down. They never looked in my direction as they left. Dr. Robertson had noticed too. Friends of yours? He asked gently. Family, actually. Ah. He didn't press further, which I appreciated. Well, their loss is our gain. We've enjoyed your company immensely tonight. Thank you. That means a lot. Emma, Mrs. Robertson said, reaching across the table to pat my hand. Whatever happened tonight, I hope you know that the community here values you tremendously. Not because of your ownership of the club or your foundation work, though those are wonderful. We value you because you're kind, thoughtful, and genuine. Those qualities are far rarer than money. I felt my eyes prickle with unexpected tears. Thank you. Thank you. Merry Christmas, dear, she said warmly. Merry Christmas. I stayed until nearly 11, talking and laughing with the Robertsons and the other families who joined our table throughout the evening. People who knew me, really knew me, and valued me for who I was rather than what I had. As the evening wound down and I finally prepared to leave, Charles found me in the lobby. Emma, a word? Of course. He guided me to a quiet corner. I wanted you to know that I've already begun documenting tonight's incident for the board. Your family's behavior was unconscionable, and I want to ensure there are consequences. Thank you, Charles. I appreciate that. I also want to apologize. As president of the member board, I should have been more aware of how new members were treating staff and other members. The fact that your family was able to behave badly for 2 months without facing consequences is my failure. It's not your failure. They're very good at presenting well to people who matter to them. Staff and people they consider beneath them get different treatment. Which is exactly why they shouldn't be members at all, he said firmly. Emma, with your permission, I'd like to recommend immediate membership revocation rather than waiting for their annual renewal. I considered this. The vindictive part of me wanted to say yes. But the part of me that had built a successful foundation on principles of redemption and growth hesitated. Let's wait, I said finally. Let's see if they learn anything from tonight. If they improve their behavior, genuinely improve it, then maybe they deserve a second chance. If they don't, then we'll revisit the revocation discussion. Charles nodded slowly. You're more generous than I would be. Maybe. Or maybe I just want to see if people can actually change when they're forced to face consequences. A fair experiment. Though I'm not optimistic about the results. Neither am I admitted. But I'd rather be surprised by growth than proven right about their inability to change. He smiled. This is why the club is lucky to have you as owner. Merry Christmas, Emma. Merry Christmas, Charles. I walked out into the cold night air. The snow had stopped, leaving everything covered in a clean white blanket that sparkled under the parking lot lights. My Subaru sat where I'd left it, looking humble and practical among the luxury vehicles. I sat in the driver's seat for a moment before starting the engine, processing everything that had happened. My phone buzzed. A text from my mother. We need to talk about tonight. Not an apology. Not an acknowledgement of what they'd done. Just a demand for more of my time and attention. I deleted the message without responding. Another text came through, this one from my brother. Emma, please. Let's fix this. I stared at it for a long moment, then typed back. There's nothing to fix, Derek. You showed me exactly who you are tonight. I believe you. I turned off my phone and started the car. As I drove out of the parking lot, I glanced in the rearview mirror. Riverside Country Club glowed in the darkness behind me, warm and welcoming, full of people who valued kindness over status. My family had tried to keep me out. They hadn't realized I owned the key to every door. And tomorrow, they'd wake up to a world where everyone they wanted to impress would know exactly what they'd done. I smiled and turned toward home, ready to spend the rest of Christmas Eve in my comfortable apartment, with my practical car parked outside, living the life I'd chosen rather than the one my family thought I should want. Sometimes the best gift you can give yourself is the freedom to stop caring what people think. Even when those people are family. Especially when those people are family.
I sat in my Audi RS e-tron GT outside my parents' sprawling Tudor mansion in Greenwich, Connecticut, deliberately leaving the $145,000 car around the corner where they couldn't see it. My mother's text had been perfectly crafted to wound. Family meeting. 7 p.m. sharp. We need to discuss your situation. My situation. That's what they've been calling my career choices for the past 3 years. Ever since I left my prestigious position as marketing director at Wallace & Sons to strike out on my own. Or as they saw it, to become a secretary. My phone buzzed. Jessica, my actual executive assistant, was updating me about the Morgan Stanley acquisition. Final offer, $2.3 billion. They won't go higher. I smiled, typing back, accept. Have legal prepare the documents. And Jessica? Perfect timing on that entrance we discussed. Of course, Miss Thompson. 7:30 p.m. sharp. I'll bring the Forbes advance copy. I checked my reflection in the rearview mirror, deliberately dressed down in a simple black blazer from Zara and minimal makeup. Let them think I couldn't afford better. The deception made tonight's revelation sweeter. The front door opened before I could knock. My mother stood there in her Chanel suit, perfect highlights framing her disapproving frown. Emily, darling, you're late. By 1 minute, Mom. Details matter in business, dear. She ushered me inside. Something you might want to consider in your current position. The living room was set up like an intervention. Dad in his power spot by the fireplace, still wearing his CEO suit from Wallace & Sons. My older brother Michael and his wife Diana on the imported Italian leather sofa. Even Aunt Patricia had been called in, perched on the antique wingback chair like a vulture in Versus. Love the blazer. Diana air-kissed my cheek. Zara's having a sale? Trying to be sustainable, I replied, watching her horror at the thought of wearing off-the-rack clothing. Let's get started. Dad cleared his throat. We're here because we're worried about you, Emily. About your choices. Michael nodded gravely. 3 years ago, you had everything. Director of Marketing at Wallace & Sons. That penthouse on Park Avenue, Stewart. Ah yes, Stewart. The investment banker they practically planned my wedding to before I called it off to start my company. The same Stewart whose firm I'd outbid last week for a $500 million tech acquisition. Not that they knew that. And now, Dad gestured vaguely. Living in that tiny apartment in Brooklyn, working as some secretary, executive assistant, Mom corrected, as if that made it better. At some startup no one's heard of, Michael added. What's it called again? Thompson Digital Solutions? I bit back a smile. The company he'd never heard of had just been valued at $14.2 billion. Something like that. Barbara's daughter just made partner at Goldman Sachs. Aunt Patricia chimed in. Youngest female partner in their history. She paused meaningfully. That could have been you. I checked my watch. 7:24 p.m. 6 minutes until Jessica's entrance. Have you even told us what this company actually does? Mom complained. All this secrecy, these long hours, and what do you have to show for it? We found your salary range online. Michael pulled out his phone. $65,000 to $85,000 for an executive assistant in New York. Really, Emily? I make that in bonuses. Dad stood, assuming his CEO stance. This ends now. We've arranged for you to interview at Wallace & Sons next week. Junior marketing position. Less than you had before, but it's a start. And Stuart's still single, Mom added hopefully. He just made managing director. I'm happy where I am, I said quietly. Happy? Dad's voice rose. You're a disappointment. Working as some secretary when you could be. The door opened. Jessica walked in, impeccably dressed in Armani, carrying the advance copy of Forbes and a leather portfolio. Miss Thompson? Sorry to interrupt, but your jet is ready for tomorrow's Tokyo meeting, and the Morgan Stanley acquisition papers need your signature. Also, Forbes wants to confirm the cover photo for next week's 40 Under 40 issue. The room froze. Mom's wine glass stopped halfway to her lips. Michael's phone slipped from his fingers. Dad stood speechless, the word disappointment still hanging in the air. The acquisition papers. I held out my hand. Are those the final numbers we discussed? Yes, Miss Thompson. $2.3 billion. All cash offer. Diana choked on her champagne. Billion? Thompson Digital Solutions, I said, signing the documents with my Mont Blanc pen, is actually just a subsidiary. The parent company is Thomson Global Technologies. We're the world's leading AI and machine learning corporation. I paused, looking at my father. You might have heard of us. We just bought controlling interest in Wallace & Sons. The Mont Blanc hit the acquisition papers with a final flourish. Behind me, I could hear Mom's wine glass shatter on the imported marble floor. Jessica, please have legal process these immediately. And about tomorrow's Tokyo meeting. I stood up, straightening my Zara blazer. Let's take the Gulfstream G800 instead of the G600. It's going to be a long week. Of course, Miss Thompson. And about that dinner with Elon Musk next Thursday. Reschedule. Tell him I'm having a family dinner that night. I turned to my shell-shocked family. That is, if everyone's free. We had a lot to discuss about Wallace & Sons' new direction. The silence was deafening. Then from the sofa, Michael whispered, CEO. My little sister is a CEO. Actually, Jessica handed me the Forbes magazine. According to this cover story, she's the queen of AI. How Emily Thompson built a $14 billion empire while her family thought she was just a secretary. I smiled at my father, still frozen by the fireplace. So, Dad, about that junior marketing position. I think I'll pass. The next morning, I sat in my real office, the entire top floor of a gleaming skyscraper in Hudson Yards, watching New York City wake up through floor-to-ceiling windows. The Thomson Global Technologies logo glowed softly on the wall behind my desk, visible from most of Lower Manhattan. My phone hadn't stopped buzzing since last night. Mom? Emily, please call us. We need to talk. Michael. Sis, about that junior analyst position I've been wanting. Diana. Just saw the Forbes preview online. Always knew you had potential. Dad, no messages. Jessica appeared with my morning coffee and market briefings. Your father's been in the Wallace & Sons lobby for 2 hours. Security wants to know how to handle it. I pulled up the lobby camera feed. There he stood, Richard Thompson Sr., still in his CEO suit, but somehow looking smaller than yesterday. The mighty head of Wallace & Sons. now technically my employee, waiting like any other visitor. Have him escorted up, I said, then added, and Jessica, hold all calls except Tokyo. While waiting, I studied the collection of artifacts on my office wall, mementos of the journey my family never knew about. My first patent certificate from age 23, the check from my first major client, a photograph of me signing the lease on our first real office, back when Thomson Digital was just 5 people in a WeWork space. The door opened. Dad stepped in, then stopped, taking in the vast office with its commanding views, the multiple screens displaying real-time market data, the digital art worth millions, and the subtle signals of power I'd carefully cultivated. Your mother couldn't sleep last night, he said finally. The Italian marble is probably still dented from her wine glass. He winced. Why didn't you tell us? Tell you what, Dad, that I was building something revolutionary while you were all busy pitying me. I gestured to a chair. Or that I bought Wallace & Sons to protect it from your outdated management style. He sat heavily. The board, they knew. The board voted unanimously for the acquisition. Your company's value dropped 40% in 2 years, Dad. The market's shifting to AI-integrated solutions, and Wallace & Sons is still operating like it's 1985. So all this time, when we thought you were working as a executive assistant, I supplied. Yes, though technically, I was running global operations for an AI empire, building partnerships with tech giants, developing patents that are reshaping entire industries. I paused, but you never asked what I actually did. You were too busy being embarrassed by my situation. He pulled out his phone, showing me the Bloomberg article that had just dropped. Emily Thompson, the stealth CEO who built a billion-dollar empire in secret. There's a quote here, he said quietly, from Elon Musk, calling you the most innovative mind in AI development. The same Elon Musk who's having dinner with you next Thursday. Wednesday now, actually. Thursday is the Wallace & Sons board meeting. First order of business. Voting on new leadership. The color drained from his face. You're firing me? Retiring you, Dad, with a very generous package. The company needs fresh direction. And Michael? He's been groomed to take over. Michael, I interrupted, lost $50 million on that failed Asian expansion last year. His grooming consisted of golf games and nepotism. Jessica's voice came through the intercom. Miss Thompson? Tokyo is ready for the merger call, and the Bloomberg reporter is here for your exclusive. Dad stood, straightening his tie, a nervous habit I'd seen countless times growing up. Emily, about last night, the things we said. You called me a disappointment, Dad, in front of the entire family, because I was just a secretary instead of following your prescribed path. I was wrong. Yes, you were. I turned to the window, watching a private helicopter, mine, land on our building's helipad. You know what the worst part was. Not the insults or the condescension. It was that none of you, not once in 3 years, asked me if I was happy, if I was building something I believed in. You just assumed I'd failed because I wasn't following your definition of success. And now, his voice was small. Now that we know. I turned back, letting him see the full weight of what I'd become. Now you get to watch from the sidelines. The Bloomberg reporter is here to cover the Wallace & Sons acquisition. Tomorrow, everyone will know that your disappointing daughter now owns the company you spent 40 years building. The family legacy is safe, just not in the hands you expected. I picked up a folder from my desk. These are the terms of your retirement. Very generous compensation, board emeritus status, full benefits, but operational control ends next week. He took the folder with trembling hands. All this time, you were planning this? No, Dad. I was building something extraordinary. Buying Wallace & Sons was just good business sense. I checked my watch. Now, if you'll excuse me, I have a merger to negotiate with Tokyo. As he reached the door, he turned back. Your mother? She wanted me to ask about Sunday dinner. I'll have Jessica send a car. 7 o'clock. And Dad? Tell Michael not to bother asking about that analyst position. His trading record doesn't meet our standards. After he left, Jessica brought in the morning's acquisition reports. Your brother's been calling every investment bank in the city, trying to verify your net worth. I smiled, remembering Michael's smirk when he quoted my supposed $85,000 salary. Send him our latest SEC filing. Let him do the math himself. And the Wallace & Sons board packet? Distribute it tomorrow. Let them spend one more day thinking they work for Richard Thompson Sr. I picked up the Forbes magazine, my cover photo staring back confidently. Sometimes the best revenge isn't proving people wrong. It's letting them discover exactly how wrong they've been. The intercom buzzed. Tokyo is holding. Ms. Thompson. I straightened my actual Armani blazer. No more Zara needed. And turned to the screens where some of Asia's most powerful executives waited. Time to show them what a secretary can do. The Wallace & Sons boardroom fell silent as I walked in exactly 1 week later. Gone was the Zara blazer, replaced by a perfectly tailored Channel suit. 15 board members sat around the mahogany table, my father at the head, for the last time. Michael sat at Dad's right hand, his usual smirk replaced by a tightened jaw. The SEC filing I'd sent him had revealed my net worth, $8.2 billion, more than the entire Thompson family combined, multiplied by 50. Good morning, I said, taking my seat opposite Dad. Before we begin, I believe there are some organizational changes to discuss. Now wait just a minute. Michael stood up, his face reddening. You can't just walk in here and... Actually, I can. I nodded to Jessica, who distributed leather portfolios to each board member. As of 9 a.m. this morning, Thompson Global Technologies owns 67% of Wallace & Sons voting shares. And as CEO of Thompson Global, I'm implementing immediate changes. This is our family company, Michael sputtered. Dad, tell her she can't. Sit down, Michael, Dad said quietly, already knowing what was coming. Let's review your performance, shall we? I connected my laptop to the projector. Under current management, Wallace & Sons has lost 40% of its market value. Failed expansion into Asia. $50 million loss. Failed digital transformation. $30 million wasted. Client retention rate dropping to 60%. The board members shifted uncomfortably. These weren't new numbers to them. But most concerning, I continued, is this. A new slide appeared. Internal emails showing systematic discrimination against female executives, including directives to maintain traditional leadership dynamics. Several board members glanced away. They'd approved those policies. That's taken out of context, Michael protested. We were preserving company culture. The culture that rejected my marketing proposals 3 years ago? I pulled up another email. Or the culture that called my AI integration plan cute and ambitious. Dad's face paled. He'd written that email. Here's what happens next. I stood up, commanding the room just as Dad had taught me, though never expecting I'd use these lessons against him. Richard Thompson Sr. retires, effective immediately. Michael Thompson's position is terminated, also immediately. The board will be restructured with a focus on technological innovation and diversity. You can't fire me. Michael slammed his hand on the table. I'm family. Exactly why I should. I pulled up his trading records. These unauthorized risks you took, under my leadership, they'll trigger an SEC investigation. Would you prefer that, or a quiet resignation with a generous severance package? The room went deadly quiet. Michael's face turned from red to white. You're destroying Dad's legacy. He tried one last time. No, Michael, I'm saving it. Wallace & Sons was 3 years from bankruptcy. Your traditional values were killing a 100-year-old company. Want to know what your sister, the secretary, did in the same 3 years? Jessica dimmed the lights. On the screen, Thompson Global Technologies' growth chart appeared, climbing like a rocket. Market cap, $14.2 billion. Client retention, 98%. Profit margins triple the industry standard. And this morning, we announced a partnership with Tesla for next-generation AI integration. That's why Elon keeps rescheduling dinner. One of the board members whistled softly. Another was already updating his LinkedIn profile. Dad. Michael looked desperately at our father. Say something. But Dad just sat there, finally seeing me clearly. Not as his disappointing daughter, but as the business leader he'd always wanted, just not in the way he'd imagined. The severance packages are generous, I continued. Health insurance, stock options, comfortable retirement for Dad. Michael, you'll receive 2 years' salary, provided you sign the non-disclosure agreement. Your trading records stay private. And if we refuse, Michael's voice cracked. Then the SEC gets very interested in your Asian expansion decisions. Those missing funds. I found them. Michael slumped in his chair. He'd embezzled millions, thinking no one would notice. But I'd noticed everything, documenting each violation while building my own empire. The cars will take you home. I gestured to the waiting town cars outside. Your offices have already been packed. But first, I placed one last document on the table. Dad needs to sign the leadership transition papers. Dad picked up the Mont Blanc, the same one I'd used to sign the acquisition papers in their living room. His hand trembled slightly. Was any of it real? He asked quietly. The small apartment? The secretary job? The apartment is real. I own the building. The secretary job was CEO from day one. I just let you see what you wanted to see. Why? Because 3 years ago, you all made it clear that my ideas weren't welcome here. So I built something better. Something that will take Wallace & Sons into the future, with or without the Thompson men. He signed the papers. Miss Thompson. Jessica appeared at the door. The press is ready for the announcement. Thank you, Jessica. I gathered my things, then paused. Oh, and Michael? That analyst position you wanted? The answer's still no. We only hire on merit. As I walked out, I heard one board member whisper, Did you see the Tesla deal numbers? Billions. Another replied, Forget that. Did you see her signature? She's been signing CEO for 3 years, right under their noses. In the elevator down to the press conference, Jessica handed me the latest market updates. Wallace & Sons stock was already up 30% on acquisition news. Thompson Global had gained another $1 billion in value since morning. Your mother called again, she said. About Sunday dinner? I smiled, thinking of the Forbes magazines, I'd had delivered to every country club in Greenwich. By Sunday, every social circle that had whispered about my failure would know the truth. "Tell her I'll be there," I said as the elevator doors opened to a wall of cameras. "After all, I'm bringing a new family tradition, success on my own terms." Sunday dinner at the Thompson Mansion felt different now. The same imported crystal gleamed, the same Limoges china graced the table, but the power dynamics had shifted seismically. Mom had spent 3 hours with her personal chef preparing my childhood favorites, a peace offering wrapped in puff pastry and truffle sauce. I arrived deliberately early, having spent the morning closing a $5 billion deal from my office. The Thompson Global Technologies stock had jumped another 15% after the Tesla partnership announcement. Dad's retirement package had just gained several million in value. Not that he was celebrating. "Emily, darling." Mom rushed forward as I entered, then stopped awkwardly, unsure how to greet this new version of her daughter. The CEO version, the billionaire version. "Hi, Mom." I handed her a gift bag from Milan. I remembered you loved their scarves. She pulled out the limited edition Hermes silk, her hands trembling slightly. We saw you on CNBC this morning. With Warren Buffett. Just a quick interview about market trends." I didn't mention that I'd flown back on my private jet specifically for this dinner. Let them wonder about my schedule, for once. Dad sat in his study, staring at the Wall Street Journal where my face graced the cover. Tech Stealth Queen. How Emily Thompson revolutionized AI while playing secretary. The article detailed my journey, including every project Wallace and Sons had rejected before I struck out on my own. "The board ratified all the changes," he said without looking up. "Unanimous vote. They're pragmatic. Thompson Global's technology will increase their bonuses tenfold." "And Michael?" "Accepted the severance package. Had to, after our forensic audit found more discrepancies." I sat across from him. "He's lucky I'm keeping it quiet." Mom appeared with drinks. My favorite whiskey, I noticed. She'd been doing her research. "Diana called," she said carefully. They're getting divorced. After the SEC investigation. Michael's trading records weren't the only ones I found. I sipped the whiskey. Diana's been insider trading for years, using Michael's access. The doorbell rang. Mom froze. That must be Aunt Patricia. She insisted on coming. Perfect. I smiled. She should see this too. Aunt Patricia swept in wearing new designer labels, clearly purchased after learning of my success. "Emily, darling, I always told everyone you were the clever one." "Really?" I pulled out my phone. "Want to hear the recording from last week? When you called me a disappointment?" The room temperature dropped 10 degrees. That was a mistake, like telling Barbara's daughter she could have my office at Wallace and Sons. I raised an eyebrow. By the way, Goldman Sachs rescinded her partner offer after finding out about her involvement in Michael's Asian deals. Mom's hands shook as she served dinner. The conversation stayed superficial, safe topics like weather and wine vintages, until Dad finally asked the question they'd all been avoiding. "Why didn't you tell us what you were building?" I set down my fork. "Remember my first marketing presentation at Wallace and Sons? I proposed integrating AI into our client services. You laughed. Called it cute that I thought I understood technology." "We were wrong," he admitted. "Yes, but instead of fighting to prove myself, I decided to show you. Every patronizing comment, every dismissive gesture, it just fueled me to build something bigger. Something that would make Wallace and Sons look like a small-town operation. And now, Mom asked quietly, now that we know, now you get to watch. Watch as I transform the company you thought was too traditional to change. Watch as the daughter you dismissed as a secretary revolutionizes an entire industry. I turned to Aunt Patricia. Watch as I accomplish everything you said I couldn't. My phone buzzed. Jessica, right on schedule. Ms. Thompson, Beijing approved the merger, and Time magazine wants you for next month's cover. The table fell silent. Also, Mr. Musk confirmed dinner for Wednesday. His team loved the prototype. Dad's hand tightened on his wine glass. The prototype, my latest AI innovation, was worth more than Wallace and Sons' entire market cap. Thank you, Jessica. Send the jet to Beijing tomorrow. I'll review the contracts personally. After I hung up, Mom tried again. We're having a family reunion next month. Your cousins would love to see you. The same cousins who mocked my secretary job on Facebook. Forward me their resumes. My HR team is always looking for entry-level positions. Emily, Dad's voice cracked slightly. We were wrong. Completely wrong. But you're still our daughter. Am I? Because last week, I was a disappointment, a failure, an embarrassment to the Thompson name. I stood up. Now I'm the most successful Thompson in history, and suddenly family matters. Please, Mom whispered. We want to make it right. I looked around the dining room at the trappings of success that had defined my childhood. The success they'd wanted for me, but only on their terms. Here's what's going to happen, I said finally. Wallace and Sons will be fully integrated into Thompson Global Technologies. Dad's retirement package is secure. Michael's secrets stay buried, provided he stays quiet. And you, I turned to my mother. You'll have to accept that your daughter isn't just successful. She's more successful than you ever imagined, on her own terms. And Sunday dinners? Mom asked hopefully. We'll see. My schedule's quite full between Tokyo, Beijing, and Silicon Valley. I checked my watch. A subtle Patek Philippe, worth more than their car. Speaking of which, I have a video call with Singapore in an hour. As I walked to the door, Dad called out, Emily? That AI proposal you made 3 years ago, I found it in my old files. It was brilliant. We were too blind to see it. I turned back one last time. No, Dad, you weren't blind. You just couldn't see past your own expectations. But that's okay. It made the view from the top so much sweeter. Outside, my driver held the door to the Maybach. Home, Miss Thompson? No. I smiled, thinking of the empire I'd built while they underestimated me. Take me to the office. Success doesn't sleep, and neither do I. The car pulled away, leaving behind a family finally realizing that their greatest achievement wasn't the son they'd groomed for success, but the daughter they'd failed to see coming. Sometimes the best revenge isn't proving people wrong. It's exceeding every expectation they never thought you could meet.
The annual shareholders meeting of Bennett Industries was held in the grand ballroom of the Riverside Hotel, the same venue where my parents had celebrated their 30th wedding anniversary. 200 folding chairs faced a stage with a podium and projection screen. Crystal chandeliers hung overhead. Waiters circulated with coffee and pastries. I sat in the back row, my laptop open, taking notes like I'd done at every shareholders meeting for the past 8 years. My father, Robert Bennett, stood at the podium in his custom navy suit, his silver hair perfectly styled, commanding the room with the presence of a man who'd built a manufacturing empire from scratch. Bennett Industries produced industrial components for automotive, aerospace, and construction companies. 42 facilities across 11 states. Annual revenue of $1.2 billion. As you can see from the quarterly report, my father was saying, we've exceeded projections in every sector. Our aerospace division alone has grown 23% year-over-year. Shareholders nodded approvingly. Most were silent partners, investment groups, and family friends who'd bought in during various funding rounds over the company's 35-year history. My mother, Patricia Bennett, sat in the front row next to my older brother David, who served as vice president of operations. My sister Lauren, the chief marketing officer, sat beside them. The Bennett family business trinity, as the industry magazines called them. I was never part of that trinity. Before we move to the financial deep dive, my father continued, I want to address something. Some of you may have noticed my youngest daughter, Emily, sitting in the back row taking notes. Every head in the room turned to look at me. I kept my expression neutral. Emily has attended these meetings for years, my father said with an indulgent smile. She takes her little notes, asks her little questions. Cute really. Shows interest in the family business, even if she doesn't quite understand the complexity of what we do here. Polite laughter rippled through the crowd. Emily has a savings account, my mother added from her seat, loud enough for everyone to hear. She's very proud of it. She checks it regularly, tracks her interest. It's adorable. More laughter. David grinned. Lauren looked uncomfortable but said nothing. Real business is too complex for everyone, my father continued, his tone patronizing but not unkind. Emily has her interests, her charity work, her little investment club meetings, and that's wonderful. But Bennett Industries requires decades of experience, intimate knowledge of manufacturing, understanding of global supply chains. He trailed off meaningfully. The implication was clear. I was a child playing at business while the adults did real work. Now, my father said, pulling up a new slide, let's talk about our expansion plans. We're looking at acquiring Precision Parts Manufacturing in Ohio, which would give us vertical integration in our automotive supply chain. I typed quietly on my laptop, my face revealing nothing. What my father didn't know, what nobody in this room except 3 people knew, was that the little savings account my mother mocked had started with $5 million from my grandfather's inheritance when I was 21. What my family didn't know was that I'd turned that $5 million into $680 million over 12 years through careful, strategic investments in private equity, real estate, and corporate debt. What absolutely nobody in this room knew, except the 3 board members who were legally required to know, was that over the past 8 years, through a complex network of holding companies, shell corporations, and strategic debt purchases, I had quietly acquired controlling interest in Bennett Industries. I owned 52% of the company my father thought he controlled. My phone buzzed silently. A text from James Morrison, the board chairman, sitting in the second row. After the financial presentation. Are you ready? I texted back. Yes. The meeting continued. David presented the operations report. Efficiency improvements, facility upgrades, workforce optimization. Lauren showed marketing metrics, brand awareness, customer satisfaction scores, new client acquisitions. Everything looked good. The company was healthy, profitable, well-managed. Except for one problem that I'd identified 3 years ago. My father was preparing to sell. He hadn't announced it publicly, but I'd seen the preliminary discussions. Private equity firms circling. Valuation assessments. My father wanted to cash out, take his billion-dollar payday and retire. He'd turn 65 next year. The sale would destroy the company. The PE firms would strip it for parts, sell off divisions, fire thousands of employees, and extract maximum value before discarding the husk. I'd been building my position specifically to prevent that. Now for our financial overview, my father said, gesturing to the CFO Richard Zhang. Richard will walk us through the numbers and then we'll open for questions. Richard approached the podium with his tablet and began his presentation. Revenue, margins, cash flow, debt ratios. Everything looked strong because I'd made sure it stayed strong. Over the past 8 years, every time Bennett Industries needed capital, I'd provided it through anonymous debt purchases and credit facilities. They thought they were getting favorable terms from generous banks. They didn't know I was the bank. When Richard finished, my father returned to the podium. Questions. Several hands went up. The usual inquiries. Dividend schedules, expansion timelines, competitive positioning. Then my hand went up. My father saw me and smiled. Yes, Emily? Do you have a question? Yes, I said, standing up. I'm wondering about the debt restructuring that happened in 2021. Bennett Industries refinanced $280 million in bonds at a very favorable rate. Can you explain who provided that financing? My father's smile widened. That's a rather technical question, sweetheart. The short answer is we worked with several institutional investors who recognized the value of our company. Richard can send you the details if you're curious, though I'm not sure you'll understand the bond documents. I understand bond documents, I said calmly. I'm asking specifically about the identity of the investors. Richard cleared his throat. The bond purchase was facilitated through a private placement with several investment groups. The lead investor was Meridian Capital Holdings. And who controls Meridian Capital Holdings? I asked. That information is confidential, Richard said, glancing at my father. I see, I said. And the $180 million credit facility established in 2022 through Sterling Financial Group. Who controls that entity? My father's smile was becoming strained. Emily, these are rather aggressive questions. If you have concerns about the company's financial structure, we can discuss it privately. I don't have concerns, I said. I'm simply trying to understand the ownership structure of Bennett Industries. The ownership structure is clear, my father said firmly. The Bennett family holds 31% of shares. Various institutional investors hold the remainder. It's all documented in our filings. And private debt? I asked. The bonds, credit facilities, and other obligations that give creditors significant influence over company decisions? The room had gone quiet. Other shareholders were looking at me with confusion and irritation. Who was this young woman challenging Robert Bennett? My father's jaw tightened. Emily, I think that's enough. These meetings are for serious business discussions, not for you to show off whatever you learned in your investment club. I'm a shareholder, I said. I have the right to ask questions. You own 40 shares, David said, turning around in his seat. 40 shares that Dad gave you as a birthday present when you turned 25. That's 0.002% of the company. You're not exactly a major stakeholder. Those 40 shares give me the right to attend this meeting and ask questions, I replied. My mother stood up. Emily, you're embarrassing yourself. This isn't your little savings account. This is a billion-dollar company with real stakeholders who don't appreciate having their time wasted. Then let's not waste time, I said. I moved to add an item to today's agenda. I'd like to discuss the possibility of a sale or acquisition of Bennett Industries. The room erupted. Shareholders turned to each other, murmuring. My father's face went red. That's not on the agenda, he said sharply. I'm making a motion as a shareholder, I said. According to the corporate bylaws, any shareholder can propose agenda items if seconded by another shareholder. I second the motion, a voice said from the second row. James Morrison stood up. The board chairman, a man my father had worked with for 20 years. My father stared at him. James, what are you doing? Following proper procedure, James said calmly. The motion has been seconded. We should discuss it. This is ridiculous, David said. Emily doesn't know anything about M&A discussions. Actually, James said, I think Emily knows quite a bit. Emily, would you like to explain your concerns? Every eye in the room turned to me. I could see my father's confusion turning to anger. My mother looked mortified. Lauren had her phone out, probably texting someone about what was happening. I walked down the aisle toward the stage, my laptop under my arm. Over the past 6 months, I said, Bennett Industries has been in preliminary discussions with 3 private equity firms about a potential sale. The discussions have been confidential, but they're happening. My father's eyes widened. How do you know about that? Because I pay attention, I said. And because a sale would be catastrophic for this company. PE firms don't buy manufacturing companies to preserve them. They buy them to strip them. That's a gross oversimplification, my father said. Is it? Let's look at the pattern. A PE firm buys a manufacturing company, loads it with debt, sells off the profitable divisions, consolidates facilities, fires middle management, and extracts maximum value over 5 years before selling the remains to another buyer. Meanwhile, thousands of employees lose their jobs, communities lose their economic anchors, and the company's legacy is destroyed. "You're being dramatic," David said. "Am I? Let me read you something." I opened my laptop. This is from an email sent by Blackstone Partners to Dad's personal email 3 weeks ago. "We see significant value extraction opportunities through facility consolidation and workforce optimization. Our models show 40% cost reduction through strategic restructuring." The room went silent. "How the hell did you get my emails?" my father demanded. "I didn't," I said. "But Blackstone Partners CC'd several people on that email, including some who thought the company's employees deserved to know what was being planned." That was a lie. I'd actually gotten the email through a contact at one of the law firms involved in the discussions. But the effect was the same. "You had no right," my father started. "Shareholders have every right to know when the company is being sold," I interrupted. "Especially when that sale will destroy the company." "Nobody's destroying anything," my father said. "I've spent 35 years building Bennett Industries. I'm exploring options for succession planning. I'm 64 years old, Emily. I won't run this company forever." "Then let David run it," I said. "Or Lauren. Or hire a professional CEO. Don't sell to vultures who will tear apart everything you built." "You don't understand how this works," my mother said from her seat. "Your father deserves to retire. To enjoy the fruits of his labor. The sale would give us financial security." "You have financial security," I said. "You have a profitable company that generates tens of millions in annual profits. Why do you need $1 billion buyout?" "Because I earned it," my father said, his voice hard. "I built this from nothing. I took the risks. I made the sacrifices. And I'll be damned if my daughter, who's never worked a real day in this company, is going to lecture me about business decisions." "She's right to ask questions," James Morrison said, standing up again. "In fact, I think we need to have a broader discussion about the company's future. Which is why I've asked several people to join us today." The ballroom's side door opened. 3 people walked in: Margaret Chin, the company's general counsel; Thomas Westbrook, an investment banker from Goldman Sachs; and Catherine Rodriguez, a senior partner from the accounting firm that handled Bennett Industries audits. "What is this?" my father demanded. "This," James said, "is a special session of the board of directors, convened under emergency provisions of the corporate bylaws. We're here to discuss a significant change in the company's ownership structure." "What change?" David asked, standing up now too. "Dad owns 31% of the company. The family controls the board." "What are you talking about?" James looked at me. "Emily, would you like to explain? Or should I?" Everyone was staring at me now. My father's face had gone from red to pale. My mother looked confused. Lauren had put down her phone. "I'll explain," I said. I connected my laptop to the projection system. A spreadsheet appeared on the screen behind me. "This is Bennett Industries' complete ownership structure," I said. "As you can see, the Bennett family holds 31% of equity shares. Various institutional investors hold another 39%. That's the public structure that everyone knows about." I clicked to the next slide. "But Bennett Industries also has $460 million in outstanding debt. Corporate bonds, credit facilities, and private loans. These debt obligations give the creditors significant control over company decisions. In many cases, more control than equity shareholders." Another slide. "The largest creditor is Meridian Capital Holdings, which holds $280 million in bonds. The second largest is Sterling Financial Group, which provides a $180 million credit facility. Together, these 2 entities control 75% of Bennett Industries' debt." I paused and looked at my father. "And both entities are wholly owned subsidiaries of Thornton Investment Group." Silence. Complete absolute silence. "Who the hell is Thornton Investment Group?" David finally asked. I clicked to the next slide. It showed my face next to the corporate logo. I said. "Thornton is my mother's maiden name. I established Thornton Investment Group 9 years ago. Over the past 8 years, I've systematically acquired debt positions in Bennett Industries. My father was staring at the screen like it showed his own death certificate. You're saying? He started then stopped. I'm saying that I hold $460 million in Bennett Industries debt, I said. Which, combined with my equity position and convertible instruments, gives me effective control of 52% of the company. That's impossible, my mother whispered. It's not only possible, it's documented, Margaret Chin said, standing up. I've reviewed all the paperwork. Emily's ownership structure is completely legal and has been properly disclosed to the board as required by law. The board knew? Lauren asked. 3 board members knew, James Morrison confirmed. Myself, Margaret, and Richard Zhang. We've been legally required to know because Emily's debt position crossed the threshold for required disclosure 18 months ago. My father turned to Richard Zhang, who looked uncomfortable but nodded confirmation. Why didn't you tell me? My father demanded. Because Emily asked us not to, James said. And legally we didn't have to. The disclosure requirements are to the board, not to all shareholders. I'm the CEO, my father shouted. And Emily is the majority owner, James replied. Which means technically you work for her. The room erupted again. Shareholders shouting questions. David arguing with James. My mother sitting frozen in her chair. I waited for the chaos to settle. I didn't reveal this position because I had no reason to, I finally said. The company was well managed. Profitable. Growing. I was happy to remain a silent partner. Then why reveal it now? Lauren asked. Because Dad is planning to sell to a private equity firm that will destroy everything he built, I said. And I'm not going to let that happen. My father walked slowly down from the stage, stopping a few feet from me. Up close I could see how shocked he was. How confused. How? He asked quietly. Where did you get $460 million? Grandfather left me $5 million when I was 21, I said. He told me to put it in a savings account. To be responsible with it. To not waste it on foolish investments. So you used it to buy debt in my company? I used it to build an investment portfolio, I said. I invested in private equity. Real estate. Venture capital. I was very, very good at it. Over 12 years, I turned $5 million into $680 million. My mother made a small sound. And you used that money to buy control of Bennett Industries? My father asked. I used that money to protect Bennett Industries, I corrected. Every time the company needed financing, I provided it. Favorable terms. Low interest rates. Flexible covenants. I helped fund the expansion into aerospace. I backed the facility upgrades. I supported the R&D investments. You've been subsidizing us? David asked. I've been investing in you, I said. Because this company is worth protecting. Because it employs 8,400 people. Because it's a real business that makes real things that matter. And now you're going to stop the sale, my father said flatly. Yes. Even though I want to sell. Even though I've earned the right to retire and cash out. You can retire, I said. David can be CEO. Or we can hire someone. But we're not selling to private equity. My father stared at me for a long moment. Then he turned to James Morrison. Is this legal? Can she actually do this? It's completely legal, James confirmed. Emily holds the majority position. She has the right to block any sale. In fact, given her debt position, she has veto power over virtually any major corporate decision. So I've been working for my daughter for the past 8 years without knowing it, my father said. You've been working with your daughter, I corrected. I never interfered with your management. I never questioned your decisions. I supported every initiative you proposed. While secretly buying up my company. While protecting your company, I said. Dad, you built something incredible. Something that matters. And I wasn't going to let it be destroyed just so you could have a bigger retirement account. This is insane, David said. You're 29 years old. You've never run a manufacturing facility. You've never managed a supply chain. What makes you think you can control this company? I'm not going to run it, I said. You are. Or Lauren. Or whoever is the best person for the job. I'm a passive investor, David. I just want to make sure the company survives. Thomas Westbrook from Goldman Sachs spoke up. If I may, I've reviewed Emily's investment track record. Her returns are exceptional. If she'd been managing Bennett Industries' investment portfolio, the company would be worth substantially more than it is now. Nobody asked you, my mother snapped. Actually, I did, James Morrison said. I asked Thomas to review Emily's credentials when she first disclosed her position to the board. I wanted to make sure she wasn't a corporate raider or some kind of threat. What I found was that she's one of the most successful private investors in the state. Her portfolio outperforms most hedge funds. And you never told us, my father said. Because she asked me not to, James replied. And frankly, Robert, would you have listened? You just mocked her savings account in front of 200 people. You told this room that she doesn't understand complex business. Would you have taken her seriously if we'd told you? My father didn't answer. I have a proposal, I said into the silence. Dad, you can retire. Take your equity stake, 31% of $1 billion company, and enjoy your retirement. That's over $300 million. You've earned it. But no sale to private equity, he said. No sale to private equity, I confirmed. David becomes CEO. Lauren stays as CMO. We hire a new CFO since Richard is ready to retire. The company continues operating as it always has, but with better capital structure and no vultures circling. And you? My father asked. What do you get? I get to know that grandfather's legacy is protected, I said. That the company he started and you built continues to exist. That 8,400 people keep their jobs. That manufacturing stays in America instead of being gutted and shipped overseas. Catherine Rodriguez from the accounting firm spoke up. I've reviewed Emily's proposal. It's financially sound. The company would actually be in a stronger position with her capital backing than it would be under private equity ownership. Because she's not extracting value, Margaret Chin added. She's providing capital at below market rates. She's essentially subsidizing the company's growth. My father looked around the room, at the shareholders watching this unfold, at the board members who'd known this secret, at his children processing this revelation. You really turned $5 million into $680 million? He asked me. Yes. In 12 years. Yes. How? By paying attention, I said. By learning. By taking your advice, actually. You always said to invest in things you understand. I understood manufacturing. I understood industrial supply chains. So I invested in companies like Bennett Industries. And I was careful. Conservative. Strategic. You could have told us, my mother said, her voice breaking. You let us think. We thought you were unemployed. I offered. Living off that little savings account? I know what you thought, Mom. Everyone made it very clear. Why didn't you correct us? Lauren asked. Would you have believed me? I asked. Or would you have accused me of lying? Of exaggerating? Of trying to compete with David and his real job? Lauren looked away. I attended these meetings for 8 years, I continued. I took notes. I asked questions. And every single time I was treated like a child playing dress-up. Dad made jokes about my savings account. David rolled his eyes at my questions. You all made it clear that I wasn't part of the real family business. But you were, my father said quietly. You were the biggest part. We just didn't know it. No, I said. You didn't look. The room stayed quiet for a long moment. Finally, James Morrison spoke. We need to take a formal vote. Emily has proposed blocking any sale to private equity and transitioning to new leadership under David Bennett as CEO. All those in favor? Every board member raised their hand. James, Margaret, Richard, and 3 others I recognized as longtime advisors. The motion passes, James declared. Bennett Industries will not be sold. Robert Bennett will transition to Chairman Emeritus. David Bennett will become CEO effective immediately. My father stood there looking older suddenly. Smaller. I need some air, he said and walked out of the ballroom. My mother followed him. David and Lauren exchanged glances but stayed. The shareholders began filing out, talking among themselves, processing what they'd just witnessed. James Morrison approached me. That went better than I expected. Did it? Nobody threw anything. I count that as a win. I almost smiled. David walked over, his expression unreadable. So you're my boss now. I'm your investor, I corrected. You're the CEO. Run the company. I'll stay out of your way. Why should I believe that? Because I've been staying out of your way for 8 years, I said. I could have interfered at any time. I never did. He studied me for a long moment. I don't know whether to be impressed or pissed off. You can be both. Are you going to want board meetings? Reports? Updates? Quarterly financial reviews, I said. Same as any investor. That's it. Lauren joined us. I have to ask. Why Bennett Industries? You could have invested in anything. Why Dad's company? Because it's not just Dad's company, I said. It's grandfather's legacy. It's 8,400 people's livelihoods. It's the reason why 5 communities in 3 states have functioning economies. And it's worth protecting. Even from Dad? She asked. Especially from Dad, I said. He built something incredible, but he was about to destroy it for a payout. I couldn't let that happen. David shook his head slowly. You're either the smartest person I know or completely insane. Possibly both, I admitted. My phone buzzed. A text from my father. Can we talk? Privately? I texted back. Tomorrow. You need time to process this. I packed up my laptop and headed for the exit. Thomas Westbrook caught up with me in the hallway. That was the most dramatic shareholders meeting I've ever attended, he said. And I've been to a lot of shareholders meetings. Sorry for the theatrics. Don't be. You just saved a company and made yourself a legend. By the way, if you ever want to discuss other investment opportunities, give me a call. Goldman would love to work with you. I'll keep that in mind. I walked out into the afternoon sunlight. My phone was exploding with texts and calls, but I ignored them all. Instead, I drove to the cemetery where my grandfather was buried. I sat on the grass next to his headstone. Hey, Grandpa, I said quietly. Remember when you gave me that $5 million and everyone said I should just put it in a savings account? That I shouldn't take risks because I was too young to understand investing. The wind rustled through the trees. I took the risk anyway, I continued. And today I used what I built to protect everything you started. The company. The jobs. The legacy. I sat there for a while watching the clouds move across the sky. They thought I was focusing on my little savings account, I said. Turns out I was building an empire. I drove home to my apartment, not the penthouse my parents assumed I couldn't afford, but a modest 2-bedroom I actually owned outright under my investment company's name. I poured a glass of wine and opened my laptop. My portfolio dashboard showed $680 million in assets across 47 investments. Bennett Industries was the largest, but there were dozens of others. Manufacturing companies, industrial suppliers, technology firms. My phone rang. My father. I answered. I've been thinking, he said without preamble. About what you said. About me not looking. Dad. You're right. I didn't look. I saw what I expected to see. A daughter who wasn't interested in real business. Who didn't have the drive or the ambition or the understanding. It's okay. It's not okay, he interrupted. I built a company. You built an empire. And I was too blind to notice. I didn't know what to say. I'm proud of you, he said quietly. I should have said that years ago. I'm saying it now. I'm proud of what you've accomplished. Thank you, I managed. Tomorrow can we talk about the future? Really talk? Not father to daughter but investor to CEO. I'd like that. Good. And Emily? Yes. That savings account comment was cruel. I'm sorry. I know. He hung up. I sat there holding my phone watching the sun set over the city. They'd told me to focus on my little savings account. They'd said real business was too complex. They'd mocked my notes and dismissed my questions. And while they weren't looking, I'd become the thing they never saw coming. Their owner. Their investor. Their foundation. Tomorrow we'd start building something new. But tonight I'd earned the right to smile. Because sometimes, the quietest person in the room is the most powerful. And sometimes, a savings account grows into something nobody expected. Mine just happened to grow into $680 million and control of a billion-dollar empire. Not bad for someone who didn't understand complex business. Not bad at all.